Today we're going to look at creating double number lines. We're going to be drawing double number lines like a pro, making those twin lines perfect. Today's I can create a double number line diagram and correctly place and label tick marks to represent equivalent ratios, and I can explain what the word per means. So make sure you have your I can statements, today's date, your page number, and you're ready to move on. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to order a number line, just kind of get us back into remembering about how number lines look. So I got a number line here, and I want to put all of these items on it. Okay. Let's see. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Looks like we have these in halves, fourths. Looks like fourths. So I'm going to first split this in half because it's between 0 and 2, so that would give me 1. And then if I split it here, this would be halfway in between and halfway in between here. And since I went in fourths, I need 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4, or 1. Same here, I got to split between those two halves. All right, so you can draw this line out in your notebook and figure out where they go. And we'll go over it in a second. So putting these in order, you should have put the 1/2 should go right here, because 1/2, this would be halfway between 0 and 1. The 1/4 should go halfway between the 1/2 and 0. 1 3/4, so it's 1, but then I've got to go 3 of those fourths beyond that. And now I've got the 1 5/10. What's another way to say 5/10? Yeah, 1/2. So 1 and 1/2 will go right here. And then we have 1 75/100. Does that match any of these? It does. 75/100. If you divide both of those by 25, you actually get 3/4. So 1 75/100 should have gone at the same spot as 1 3/4. So not too bad. And, part of this is thinking about how things go in order and using those number lines to help us figure out where equivalent ratios go. All right, so we're going to kind of think about what we did on the other part when we were looking at previous lesson. We were looking at colors and ratios. Okay, so remember that a double number line is two number lines that have tick marks. Remember, tick marks are just those spots on each one showing the location, and showing not only that location, but then because those line up, then we can see that they're moving at the same rate. Okay, and they represent equivalent ratios because they should have the numbers that are equivalent or that work together stacked up. In other words, like if you had a 2-to-1 ratio, you had a 2 on the one line and then 1 underneath. Well, then the next one in that ratio, the next one would be a 4 and a 2, because in the ones part, every time that you go a line, it's just 1 greater. On the other part, it's counting by 2, so it's that skip counting piece. All right, don't forget. So the other day we were doing our lesson with mixing the water, And on that one, we had, for every 5 milliliters of blue water, we needed 15 of the yellow to make it work out equivalent. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through and do a few things. So you'll need to draw out a double number line graph in your notebook. First thing it says is that on the blue water line, you need to label these tick marks. Well, what's going to go on each one? Well, if we go, we've got 5 all the way here, right? And that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 away. So each one of these, if there's 5 parts, they each have to be, 1. So I got 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, and what about on the yellow? Let's do the same ones that'll match up. So try and be careful with this. If you got a ruler or something straight, that would help. So what do we have to count by to make this at 15? Well, there are 5 of them, so each one of these has to be 3, right? So 3, 6, 9, 12. Does that work with what we talked about before? Because 15 is 3 times 5, right? 12 is 4 times 3. Oh, yeah, that works. All right. So how much yellow water should be used for 1 milliliter of blue water? Yeah, I hope you marked that it answered the question, that it should be 3 milliliters of yellow water to make that green. How much yellow water should we use to go with 11 of the blue water? Well, basically each time is multiplying by 3, right? So if we know we have 11 milliliters of blue water, we would need 33 milliliters of yellow water. What about 8? Again, we should be able to figure that out here, right? 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 8 would be here. And using that it's a 1 to 3 ratio, well, we're going to have to multiply both parts by 8. 8 times 1 is 8. 8 times 3 is 24. And so why is it useful to know how much yellow water should be used with the blue water? Why is it useful to know this back here with this 1 to 3? Well, I hope you see that it makes it easier to convert. If I know that every time here, for every 1 milliliter of blue, I need 3 milliliters of yellow, well then all I need to do is figure out how much blue water I need, multiply it by 3, and then I get my yellow water. But those match up every single time that way, so that way we make the same thing. For every 1 blue water, we have 1 blue water per 3 yellow milliliters, or 3 milliliters of water. Milliliters is not coming out of my mouth very easily today. So, back here with our original, we had 15 milliliters of yellow water per 5 milliliters of blue water, or vice versa. And basically, when we're talking about the word per is just another thing for each. So like if you're talking about buying concert tickets, 4 tickets are $20. Well, 1 ticket would be $5, right? Because if 4 of them together make 20, then it's $5 per ticket. And back like we were talking about before, it was 3 milliliters of the yellow water for 1 milliliter of the blue water. All right, so let's do a little wrapping up here. So do all the increments, all the little tick marks on each line, do they need to be equal? In other words, do the tick marks on one line have to match the one on the second line? Yeah, they do have to match on the lines because you're trying to keep the same ratios. You're trying to make it so that you're multiplying by the same thing on both the top and the bottom, on the numerator part and the denominator part, for what it's worth. And it does matter where we start each line. Both the lines have to start back at 0. It's cleaned off now, but if we look back on our original line, they both started off at 0. And the reason why we both started them at 0 is that we had the same beginning and that our tick marks lined up identically, even though they represented a different amount, because they had to represent the amount that went with them. But they went with the same rate every time you jump to a next higher amount. And that's why when we found that our 1 per 3 milliliters back here helped us see that we were counting by 3s on the yellow waters, but on the blue we were counting by 1s. Okay. All right. So make sure that you've got everything down and set and you're ready for our next lesson and your practice work now. Practice work first, and then we'll go on.